Hello, hello, everybody. And it's a non-UFC prediction podcast doing with PFL 3. And I'll fill it with some other stuff because honestly, the issue with a lot of PFL cards is there's not a ton to say about the matchups. Like, particularly on this card, for example, there's not a lot I have to say about Thad Jean versus Roman Debian. There's not a lot I have to say about Tyler Diamond versus Otto Rodriguez. There's not a lot I have to say about Brendan Ward and Don Match. Although, to be clear, just because I have very little to say about a fight doesn't mean that it's not going to be great. Because Don Madge versus Brendan Ward has all the ingredients of a really fun time at the office. Do not get me wrong. We get into some things like Jenkins versus Kamaka. That is a good fight between two good fighters. Yamauchi and Gracie. I'd have a lot to say about it, except that it's a rematch. And then Braga Gonzalez, Mousasi versus Storley, Carvalho Loughnane, Umalatov versus Koreshkov. I don't have a lot to say about any of those fights. Not a ton. It doesn't mean that they're bad, but there's just not a lot to say about. So this will probably be a short podcast, and I'll cover some options here. Coming off UFC 300, we've got a couple of interesting storylines. At the top of the pile is the fact that Jamahal Hill, apparently in a conversation with Daniel Cormier, is complaining about the lack of a pause after he kicked Pehe in the dick because it caused him to untense his body, and he was relying on that pause to kind of get back in there and whatever, a reset. And then, he got knocked out. This kind of ignores the fact that he got knocked out on a counter, one. And two, there is no mandatory pause after a foul. That seems pretty silly. That seems really, really dumb for somebody to say after they fouled someone, because then you could, while getting pressured into the cage, just kick someone in the dick and get a pause. That doesn't make any sense. Makes zero sense. Anyways, Cormier is running with that. Jamahal Hill appears to be running with that. That's dumb. I hope no one's really getting into that. There you go. And then there's a lot of discussion about how round 3 of Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, how deep was the Darce choke? How close was he to finishing it? Charles Oliveira says that he went out. People are saying it was nothing. There was even someone, I don't remember who, that I was debating with on social media that was like, yeah, no. The Darce choke is just control because it didn't finish the fight. That's insane. That is insane. No one who's ever been caught in a deep chokehold believes that it's just control. That is insane. Anyways, this goes back to the whole, did you score the fight for Oliveira? Did you score for Arman? I could see both. I mean, it comes down to the third round. Arman Tsarukyan won most of the round, finished it, caught in a Darce choke, which he was defending properly. He was in a position, he didn't appear to be out. He popped up right away. No problem. So, I don't know. It's a bit of, I guess it makes sense to fascinate over it because it obviously is it's a key thing. And Arman has a lot of fans. Charles has a lot of fans. Obviously, there's a lot there, and it's a number one contenders fight. So apparently, they offered Tsarukyan a shot at Islam in June directly after that, and he refused it. Which, to be clear, I think is smart because it's that's something like a 7-week turnaround. That would be insane. Also, it would be insane to accept a fight right after you got done fighting, anyways. Because even if you were given a normal turnaround, let's say 3 to 4 months, you don't know what's busted. you don't know what stage your body's in because you still got residual adrenaline running through your veins. It's masking pain. What pain will go away? You're certainly in pain. And which of that pain will go away over just kind of a couple nights sleep or whatever. Swelling goes down, so on. You don't know. So the idea that they would ever make a fight directly after a fight, to me, unless it was something very, very quick, unless it was a one-punch knockout type thing, is a little bit insane. So anyways, that's a fun topic. And then I do want to defend the Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev booking because a lot of people are all over it, being like, oh, if you were angry about Chito Vera getting a title shot, which I was, then why are you not making a big deal about Dustin Poirier getting a title shot? Here's the thing. They're just not the same. They're the same in the sense that, yes, Chito Vera got a title shot when he wasn't the number one contender, and yes, Dustin Poirier is getting a title shot while not being the number one contender. The difference is that with Chito Vera and Sean O'Malley, you had somebody getting a title shot while the people who should get the title shot, Merab Dvalishvili, Corey Sandhagen, were available. This was a specifically booked, marketed, scheduled fight to get a guy who shouldn't be getting a title shot. With Poirier getting a title shot, we had Makhachev and we knew he was going to fight in June, pretty much. That was on the table. Now, you could argue that the UFC kind of messed this up by having Charles Oliveira, by having Gaethje, and by having Arman Tsarukyan all fighting on UFC 300 with like a 7-week turnaround to possibly fight Islam Makhachev. But those three are not available to fight. And the only other person really to consider is Gamrot. And if you push this fight backwards, let's say we push this fight backwards so that Arman Tsarukyan, who is the guy who should get the title shot, can fight him with a full camp. We're talking about like an August or September fight at that point. Then Islam is fighting once this year, whereas under this proposal, he could fight in June, and then he can fight again towards the end of the year, probably October, maybe November-ish. And that can be the Tsarukyan fight, which, boom, there you go. That's the thing, is it's just different. This is about getting activity out of a fighter that has a limited window from where you could get multiple fights a year in. And the June date makes a lot of sense. And Poirier is the only available person outside of Gamrot who can take that fight. And I guess you could argue that Gamrot deserves the fight more. Maybe, I guess. He's got a longer winning streak going on here. Poirier, of course, just lost the Gaethje 2 fights ago. And it's coming off a win over Benoit Saint Denis, which means very, very little. Although Gamrot's coming off a win over RDA and an injury stoppage over Rafael Fiziev. So that's not exactly great either. You could argue Gamrot deserves the title shot more, but like it's a pretty dull fight. Like, considering the people, a lot of the dismissal is that like Poirier is just going to lose to Makhachev. Well, Gamrot has like no path to victory against Makhachev. Poirier at least does have a path to victory. I'm picking Makhachev, but like there is a version of that fight that Poirier wins, whereas I don't even know what a Gamrot win against Makhachev looks like, except for an injury, I guess. So that's dumb. And then PFL is getting some hot water over this Gegard Mousasi thing of not offering him fights and not letting him go. And I want to be clear on this. That's bullcrap. I don't just crap on fighter pay when it comes to the UFC. I will call out the PFL, Bellator, ONE, whatever it is happens to be at the time in regards to their own mistreatment of fighters. And in this case, it's bunk. Either book Mousasi, or if he is too expensive, I don't know what his contract is, but let's say he is too expensive, let him go. Let him go and chase down other opportunities, whether that is back in the UFC or some ridiculous, regional promotion in Europe that'll pay him a boatload of money to fight cans, whatever. But if you're not going to book him, let him go. None of this holding him hostage stuff. It's insane. I get that they want him to sign for less money, but he's very clearly not interested in that, and he shouldn't be. So there you go. The only difference is the other big difference is this always comes up is like, why do I not talk about PFL when I talk about UFC fighter pay? It's because PFL doesn't make money. I don't even know what I would want PFL to do, except in this case, either book or let the fighter go. But like realistically, do I think PFL fighters make too little? Yeah. Do I think PFL fighters getting paid more would bankrupt the promotion? Also, yeah. So like, what do I want to do? Whereas in the UFC, they could double fighter pay easily and still be insanely profitable. Like that is an incredibly different dynamic. All right, let's get on to the fights. In the main event, we have what I think is going to determine the welterweight championship winner of this tournament. Because you got Andrei Koreshkov versus Magomed Umalatov. I don't know where to put Umalatov in the rankings. I have Koreshkov at 1. He's my pick. I'm going with him. And then there's like Logan Storley also throw in there. We'll talk about him in a bit. And there's who else? Who else would I say is really a competitor here? I don't know. I think it is really just between those three. As much as I like Goto Yamauchi and Neiman Gracie, I just don't see it. But I'm taking Koreshkov. Here's why. I think I have seen Koreshkov and his solid 6'1" frame, 76 inches, fight against guys who can challenge it and who can challenge him on a physical level. And I don't think I've seen that from Umalatov, who is also 6'1" and 75-inch reach. You know, they're both very rangy for the division. They're both athletic. They're both pretty skilled. I mean, they both have a grappling game. They both have a striking game. Umalatov likes to do some like fun stuff with like spinning back fists and kicks and stuff. So it's going to be a fun fight. It's just Umalatov's high water mark is a win over Delano Taylor during a 1-4 run in Delano Taylor's career, where Delano Taylor was fighting badly, in a word. He was lost during that time period. He had come to doubt himself. You could see it when he would go out there. The body language, the fight approach, the technical stuff. It was all down. I'm gesturing with my hand, of course. You cannot see it, but like it was all very low end Taylor stuff. He was still a big guy, fairly athletic. It's not nothing. But it was a time when he was not performing to his best. And I do hope he gets back there at some point because, you know, he has all the building blocks of a fairly solid fighter. Other than that, it's just Umalatov beating cans and beating can crushers. And that's kind of the thing is I can't trust that. It's not a disqualification. We've seen guys with Umalatov style records, this undefeated sort of empty record, but clearly athletic, clearly skilled in multiple aspects of the game, and who has a solid camp behind him. I do believe he's from American Top Team. Let me check here. Yeah, it's American Top Team, so like, you know, great training environment. I am hotspotting off my phone. For the record, my internet is out and I'm hotspotting off my phone. Anything I have to look up will probably take a while, but it is ATT. And at the end of the day, I've got to take Koreshkov. I am not going to be surprised in any way if Umalatov comes out here and wins. And the money is backing Umalatov because on the betting odds lines, Umalatov is the minus 125 to minus 163 favorite, which I think is too much. And Koreshkov is plus 105 to plus 124. So if I'm going to bet on this one, and again, if you're going to bet on fights, do not bet more than you can lose because this is MMA. It's crazy. It's nuts. Matt Serra lost to GSP, or GSP lost to Matt Serra. That's all I have to say. By knockout. No one saw that coming. I would have to bet on Koreshkov because he's just the proven man. Koreshkov has fought people who had the physical and technical aspects to push back against him. And while he certainly did lose some of those, split decision to Lorenz Larkins, 2 losses to Douglas Lima, he also, you know, did beat Ben Askren as well. He did beat Lorenz Larkin. He did beat Chance Raconteur, who's an okay fighter. Hamasi, who's an okay fighter. Chidi Njokwani, who is a flawed but okay fighter. Benson Henderson, Douglas Lima, Nanchan Burrell. Like there's a lot of stuff here. Lehman Good, Mario Samropskis. These are all like good fighters at the time that he beat them who could test him and ask questions. And he was able to do it. And it's just, Umalatov might be that guy. I just don't know that he is. And I can't pull the trigger on that. So I've got Koreshkov, who is my pick to take the entire tournament, assuming he doesn't pick up any injuries. So they went right for the jugular by having these two fight each other. Like the winner of this fight, assuming they get out of here without any injuries and they can continue in the tournament, probably going to win. Probably going to win. Because aside from boring Logan Storley, I don't have anything else for them. Brendan Loughnane versus Pedro Carvalho. I am taking Brendan Loughnane. Pedro Carvalho is a straight blast gym, Ireland fighter, Conor McGregor disciple, I do believe. And he's frustrating because his win over Mads Burnell, great performance. His win over Daniel Weichel, good performance. These are performances above and beyond. These are 2 very, very, very good wins. But a lot of his other fights are just underwhelming. He's not a spectacular athlete. He's got straight blast gym mechanics, which, if you've ever noticed, the only people that like succeed out of SBG Ireland are guys who are phenomenal athletes. Conor McGregor, Johnny Walker, I guess you could say. That's kind of about it. Like Gunnar Nelson, I guess, but Gunnar Nelson's not really an SBG guy. But like a lot of them end up like Cathal Pendrad and Artem Lobov. Like they're not bad, but they're not good unless they're fantastic athletes, and Carvalho just isn't. So I got Brendan Loughnane, the super well-rounded guy, very process-driven fighter, has good game plans, has well-rounded skills, is not reliant on having a massive physical advantage anywhere. Like, he is kind of like this lab-built fighter, honestly, with no real weaknesses. Like, he did get knocked out by Pinedo recently. But at the same time, you know, I don't have doubts about his chin being soft or anything like that. So I got to go with Loughnane, probably by decision, because Carvalho doesn't get finished a ton, and Loughnane is not a particularly venomous finisher as a grappler or as a striker. He can finish you. He's got knockouts. He's got subs. Like, don't get me wrong, but he's not a guy who... Usually when he gets a finish, it's almost like somebody asking for it. They're presenting an opportunity too good to pass up for him to, well, pass up. So, yeah, I'll say it goes the distance. He is a massive favorite, minus 535 to minus 600 on Loughnane. That's a little bit much. Like, Pedro Carvalho is not a terrible fighter. Like, he's not a guy who I'd put at plus 350 to plus 425 here, but is what it is. Logan Storley versus Jamahal Mousasi. I always want to put an F in there. I don't know why. I don't get it. Mousasi is a guy who I was actually I actually kind of enjoyed during his KSW run. He's got cool, silly striking, like Wushu Sanda style Russian fighter, meaning he's kind of like a bit of a more active version of like Muslim Salikov, if you want to use that kind of comparison. And Logan Storley never watches MVP fight. Please do not watch Logan Storley versus MVP unless you really, really need to be reminded that MVP is not that good. Anyways, Logan Storley wrestles people. He wrestles them a lot. Even though he's theoretically working on his striking, he's 5'9", 71.5 inch reach. It's just not really good enough to strike with people at 170. He just kind of doesn't really have the frame for it. I mean, I guess he does. 71.5 inches is not that short, but still, there are a lot of guys who will outrange him. I mean, like, we were talking about Umalatov and Koreshkov. They're 6'1". They're 75, 76 inch reaches. Looking down here further, even go to Yamauchi, who's a former featherweight, 5'10", 74 inches. Neiman Gracie, 6 foot, 74 inches. Further on down, Staropoli, 6 foot, 71. Really? Staropoli, only 71 inches. That is weird. He has the shortest reach in the entire tournament. I mean, tied with Brennan Ward. But that's also very weird. Anyways, what I'm getting at here is that Logan Storley will probably just wrestle Mousasi to the ground, control him, and pick up a decision that way. That is how I see this going. It's kind of a grinding, boring style of fight. Don't get me wrong. It's not crowd pleasing. It's kind of weird that of all the Bellator fighters, and they brought in a couple. Neiman Gracie's in here, Koreshkov's in here, Go to Yamauchi's in here. So like Brennan Ward, no shortage of like Bellator guys in here, but it is a bit weird that Logan Storley is one of the ones they brought in, because he is, to a degree, is a kind of guy that's actually kind of meant for a tournament, because, when he wins and he overwhelms people with his wrestling, he doesn't really take a ton of damage. So like it suits him. But it does mean that you're going to get a grinding performance quite regularly. So Logan Storley over Mousasi. I will be cheering for Mousasi because he does fun stuff. But it's never really been a reason I pick people. So Storley, decision, he's minus 200 to minus 225. Mousasi, 148 to plus 175. It's weird that that fight is so much closer than Loughnane versus Carvalho. Justin Gonzalez versus Gabriel Alves Braga. Braga is your sort of classic Brazilian shoot-a-box guy. I don't think he is actually from shoot-a-box, but like I guarantee you this guy grew up with some emulation of the shoot-a-box guys. He is from Tropa Thai. He's a fun fighter. Went through the PFL tournament last year. Won a split decision against Chris Wade. Knocked out Marlon Moraes. Split decision with Jesus Pinedo. Also lost to Jesus Pinedo because Jesus Pinedo knocks people out sometimes and loses at other times. He was supposed to fight Aaron Pico at the PFL versus Bellator card. Pulled out. He was supposed to fight Patricio Pitbull at that same card when he got rebooked, and then that fell apart. So yeah, he's up against Justin Gonzalez here. Justin Gonzalez is a good little athlete. I believe a wrestling background, although I couldn't actually find any notification of that. But he does everything fairly well. He's your prototypical athlete guy fighter, honestly. Not spectacular athlete, but does everything a little bit well. Good cardio, good durability. Kind of makes things close, but like I'm gonna go with Braga to win because he's a little bit like just more crazy, kind of big moment-esque. I guess you could say I'm picking him because he's fun, but like I'm also just not really trusting Gonzalez to grind him out. So yeah, I got Braga by decision. He'll just have the big moments. I realize I'm not picking a lot of finishes on this card, so I am hoping to be wrong in that regard because I like having some subs, I like having some TKOs. But I do have Braga winning here by decision. Minus 192 to minus 220. So it looks like I am far from alone. Gonzalez is plus 150 to plus 165. We have the rematch between Yamauchi and Neiman Gracie. It was less than 2 years ago that they had this fight. And as much as I appreciate Neiman Gracie, he's the Gracie who develops kind of every time out. Like shows off something a little bit new, a little bit more comfortable striking, a little bit more of a game plan, not just the BJJ guy. But his record against people who are not afraid to grapple with him and can stop him from grappling with them a little bit is not good. Yamauchi knocked him out last time, and I expect him to have learned from that enough to avoid getting knocked out, and I'm picking yet another decision. But I just don't see him getting prolonged grappling exchanges with Yamauchi, who, despite being a former featherweight, has a bizarrely decent frame here. 5'10", 74 inches reach. Bizarrely, hasn't really had a lot of physical problems with the 170 transition. Not a ton. And is hard to out wrestle. Like, is himself a really solid grappler and who has heavy hands and a pretty successful striking style. It's not necessarily textbook. There's a little bit of weirdness to it. But that, I think, makes it just that much better. So I've got Goto Yamauchi by decision. He's minus 225 to minus 300. Gracie's plus 163 to plus 240. And that sounds about right. But I could see it. Moving on to Bubba Jenkins versus Kai Kamaka III. I just think Bubba Jenkins will out-wrestle him. Like, I am not a big fan of Bubba Jenkins, stud wrestler who tried to become like a slickster boxer. But Kai Kamaka is in great shape, is durable, will put a pace on you and do all of these things, but he just always seems too small for featherweight. He seems like a bantamweight. I don't think he is a bantamweight because I was thinking he was when I originally was doing this, and then I was looking at his record. I'll look at it again. He doesn't have like any bantamweight fights. I don't see anything, but like he does. Oh, here we go. He fought a bantamweight in 2018 on Bellator 213 against Shoyin Miki, a fight he won by unanimous decision. That was his 7th fight. So he has been there before, but he's been at featherweight for like a really, really long time. It's just he feels too weak, too unphysical. And it's not like he hasn't had success. He's got a split decision winning against Henry Corrales, who I respect a lot. He's got a win over John DeJesus, who's not a bad fighter. He fought in the UFC and had a competitive fight with TJ Brown. He beat Tony Kelly, although Tony Kelly is a bantamweight. But like he also did just get manhandled by Jonathan Pierce. And Bubba Jenkins is the far, far more physical and better wrestler than Jonathan Pierce. Far better athlete, although smaller. Pierce is huge. Pierce is ridiculously huge for a featherweight. But I got to go with Bubba Jenkins. Like, as much as I don't like him, he's not going to lose to a guy who probably doesn't have the physical power to really hurt him and doesn't have the physical power to really out-wrestle him. So, Bubba Jenkins, decision. Wouldn't be shocked if he GMP'd him. Wouldn't be shocked if he hit him with an RNC. Betting odds are kind of close. Jenkins is only a minus 150 to minus 160 favorite. Kamaka plus 110 to plus 130. Again, I go back to the fact that Loughnane's like a minus 500 plus favorite. I don't get it. I don't understand. Then you got Adam Borics, who is my pick to win at 145 because Adam Borics is kind of insane, kind of a loopy, crazy striker. And if you don't have a full camp to just deal with him and you're dealing with this tournament idea, I don't think you're going to be terribly prepared for him. Enrique Barzola is a steel-headed, stone-skulled individual who has a grinding positional grappler style, but he's coming up from 135. That usually doesn't transmit very well because you usually, as a wrestler, as a top control grappler, as a takedown artist, want to go as low as possible. So the fact that he's fighting up at 145, I think, is a problem for him, even though I have a immense respect for Enrique Barzola. I am going to go with Borics to win by decision because Barzola is very, very persistent and very, very durable, and I don't see him getting knocked out. But that is it. I just see all the big moments, the dynamic fun, the big moments being Boric's. He's not an instant takedown guy. Like Adam Borics has got some solid wins against some solid takedown artists. It's not like he's lacking in that department. He has beaten Mads Burnell. He has beaten Jeremy Kennedy. He has beaten Pat Curran, Aaron Pico, although those last two by knockout. But like, he went the distance with like Mads Burnell and Jeremy Kennedy without losing. And those are bigger versions and more potent versions of this matchup with Enrique Barzola. So yeah, I've got to go with Adam Borics. He is the favorite minus 138 to minus 167, plus 100 to plus 125 for Barzola. See, I would have that wider. Timur Khizriev versus Brett Johns. I hate Khizriev is like my Logan Storley at 145. He's achieved quite a bit. He's 14-0. He's beaten Justin Gonzalez. He's beaten Richie Smullen. He's beaten Daniel Weichel. But I'm never impressed. It always feels like he could do more. He's got some cool stuff, and I think he will win here, unfortunately, because Brett Johns is another one coming up from 135 and is a guy who did lose to Danny Sabatello, who is a 135 version of Colby Covington, if you're not familiar with him. It's a shame because like Brett Johns in the UFC, like I don't really know why he didn't end up staying in the UFC. His run in the UFC was quite good. He's, 10-3. He's 20-3, pardon me. He lost to Pedro Munoz and Aljamain Sterling. No shame there. Beat Kwaho Kak. We beat Albert Morales, Joe Soto, Tony Gravely, and most impressive, Montel Jackson through his run there. So I don't know. There's hope, but Khizriev is undefeated, is very tough, and he will be the bigger man. And Brett Johns, at the end of the day, while he has a more functional striking game, I think, is a guy who does kind of rely on takedowns and top control. So I don't see him getting that. I see Khizriev winning by decision. It's what Khizriev does. He's a minus 250 to minus 285 favorite. Jones plus 175 to plus 230. Leandro Staropoli is going to lose to Murat Ramazanov because Staropoli cannot wrestle. That's basically it. Staropoli's career has been always hampered by his, not necessarily his inability to wrestle, but like his inability to like break clinches. He gets stuck there repetitively. And Ramazanov, who is not amazing, although he does have wins over Katastim over in one, and also Nursultan Ruziboev and famously had a groin shot ended fight with Roberto Soldic. He's a bit dull, but like the dude does have takedowns, does have clinch wrestling. These are all things that lead to Ramazanov being able to beat Staropoli. There you go. Staropoli is a plus 350 to plus 425 underdog, minus 549 to minus 670 on Ramazanov. Don Madge versus Brennan Ward. This is going to be fun. These two are both like guys who are more than willing to change hands, but like I can never feel like I never feel like I can pick Brennan Ward. He's a big dude. He's fought routinely at 185. So him down at 170, even though he's only 5'10", 71-inch reach, which is the shortest of anyone in this tournament. You know, he's dangerous. He's a heavy hitter. He's reckless a little bit. He's a brawler. I just have Don Madge being a little bit more technical, a little bit smarter and more game plan driven, and picking up the win by TKO. Ward is the kind of guy who begs to get finished. I don't know. I'm just looking forward to a good, fun fight. Madge is the favorite, minus 175 to minus 182. Ward is plus 130 to plus 150, pardon me. Madge is another guy who ended up just out of the UFC off a win. It's just very weird. Speaking of guys who are former UFC fighters, Tyler Diamond, who fought Bryce Mitchell on the Tough finale of the Season of the Tough that they were on. I'm going with Diamond here against Otto Rodriguez. And he's my underdog of the card because I don't really understand why Rodriguez is the favorite. He is a Brazilian regional guy who fought in Serbia and whose highlight is submitting Brian Moore in Bellator. Brian Moore is not that good. This is all like he's fairly well-rounded, fairly janky, fairly, he's got that veteran savvy, but like he's not particularly large for 145. In fact, he's rather small. He's 5'5". He's going to be at a 5-inch reach disadvantage, a 2-inch height disadvantage to Diamond. Diamond is a good wrestler, a good top grappler. I mean, this guy went 15 minutes and at points was legitimately beating Bryce Mitchell in like grappling exchanges. Diamond by decision. Rodriguez, like I said, is a minus 163 to minus 182 favorite. Diamond's plus 120 to plus 150. Don't get it. Honestly, don't get it. Roman Debian is being brought in here to basically lose to Thad John. There's not much to talk about there. John will TKO him. He is a minus 275 to minus 335 favorite. Plus 200, plus 250 on Debian. Jean is 6'2", 76-inch reach. He's got a great frame. He's fantastically athletic. He's only 6-0, but yeah, I got a lot of faith that he's got something. I want to see him get like properly tested. But basically, if he could end up in this tournament instead of say, who would I really want to remove? Probably Staropoli. That would be fantastic. That is the PFL card. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. I will record. What I'm gonna do is I wanna replay the Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez fight and score it live. I've done that before, and people have liked it, so I want to do that again. And obviously, we'll recap this card, but there won't be a ton to talk about, so that feels like a good time to get that in. I will see you then. Check the links down below for social media, video game stuff, and the MMA Discord, where you can make a fighter in the simulator and chase simulated combat glory.